Chris.
Hey, Eric.
Hey, everyone. This is Chris and Michaela here with Kelley and Canterbury, and we wanted to welcome you to our first podcast. Uh, you may have seen our logo before, Kelley and Canterbury. It's quite prominent with a Saint Bernard with a rescue bucket. We like to help people, and we love the image of the Saint Bernard for that purpose. But we also like dogs.
Yeah,
We have a bunch of dogs.
We're dog people.
So we were thinking maybe it's appropriate to, fashion a podcast for people curious about the legal profession and how to choose lawyers and what do we do if we called ourselves the Legal Beagles.
Yeah. The Legal Beagle podcast.
We're here to answer those kinds of questions for you the best we can so you know what to expect. I mean, the first thing right off the bat for people is, hey, what kind of a law firm do we choose when we need help? And Michaela and I just got back from Las Vegas, as many Alaskans trying to escape the cold do, go down for a little bit of sun. And we noticed how many huge billboards are all over the place. Fortunately, in Alaska, there's a law against that, right? So we can look at our beautiful mountains and not ugly billboards. But, the message that comes through often on these things is, hey, here's this big, powerful firm. We make millions and millions of dollars for you, and you should go for us. And we thought maybe one of the first things to start with for all of you is why a smaller boutique firm in Alaska, a husband and wife team, for example, what that offers that these huge firms don't.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think that first, we're with you from start to finish. So you're going to be wanting to look for somebody who hears your story once, and that it's on your schedule. It's not on their schedule. So what your schedule for, we're personal injury lawyers. So if you've been, hurt in a car wreck or hurt in a slip and fall or whatever, that you tell your story once, you tell it to your attorney, and they're with you through the whole process.
That's a good point, because bigger is not always better, right? Sometimes what happens in a large factory firm is that things are very compartmentalized, right? You walking in the door saying, hey, look, I've got a story to tell, maybe telling that story repeatedly throughout the process. Why? Because they have a specialized group that just meets with you as an intake person, right? And so you're going to sit at a table with somebody who's not your litigation attorney, maybe not even your negotiating attorney, maybe just an intake thing to evaluate your claim and kind of welcome you to the firm type of thing. But tomorrow it may be somebody else that's talking with the adjusters or the insurance company. Maybe in the end, when it gets to the finish line, it's, well, that didn't work, and now we've got a litigation attorney on there. Someone totally unfamiliar with your case from the beginning, right? And you don't want to have to tell that story over and over again, right?
Or it's like getting close to the limitations period, the timeline, to where the case either needs to be resolved or preserved for litigation. And there's being a forced settlement. Like there's not a say in it as to what the value of the damages are. And so having those kinds of discussions with the person that you're going to be working with from beginning to end.
Everyone's story is a process, right? I mean, we start in one place, but we might end up in a completely different place. Right. But it's nice to have, a person you trust that knows you from the beginning and how things evolve and helps you guide along in that process to the end. Your treatment needs and things may change as time goes by too, and your healing process. But one of the things that I think Kelley Canterbury has always valued is that personal relationship with our clients.
Right.
Where you're really part of our family, right? You're not just in a mill of, hundreds and hundreds of cases that are sifted through to see how they can rely on a high volume turnover in order to fund their practice. We're here for you, right? From start to beginning to the end, for your best interest.
Right. And it's on your schedule. I mean, we make you aware of, there's deadlines or there's this, and you're involved in all the decisions. They're not imposed on you. And so that's something to look for. Gosh, am I feeling like I'm being worked? Or am I working with somebody? Is this decision being imposed on me, or am I part of the decision? I think that's a real distinction to look for. Am I part of this team, or is this team
Well, that's a good point. I mean,
steering the ship without me?
strategy is important, right? You want to feel that you're part of that process. Another advantage in a small firm like ours, especially a husband and wife team, is that you may meet with either of us and your relationship grows with us, but we talk too about the practice, about your cases. Um, the two of us have different views often on a case. One might tell you everything that's great about the case. One may tell you everything that's wrong with the case. Between the two of us, we get to the right reasonable approach. That helps. I think having, uh, a pair that can both
Hmm.
analyze your case is helpful, right?
Right.
And you're not left to just
Right.
um,
And we're not competing against each other, working with each other. Sometimes in those factories, the attorneys are actually competing against, well, like a hockey team, who's going to get first line, who's going to get first case. And so they're competing against each other to get to get the case, and it's really not about you and your case, because they're just trying to get the easy money, really. Honestly, that's what it's about. And so they'll try and compete with each other to get the case.
Yeah, well, I think that it's nice if you walk in and you're sitting down in an office and you're actually talking to the attorney you're hiring, right? It's
Hmm.
not you're hiring a large firm's name without knowing who it is that's representing you, really, right? I think people feel more confident and build trust in that relationship that they have with the attorney handling their
Absolutely.
case. That's what we offer.
Absolutely.
Trust is really important. And you need to feel that you're being listened to, what your needs are, what your concerns are, that you rely on our expertise in that area to help guide you along what might be reasonable or unreasonable given certain circumstances, right?
Hmm.
Um, the Because you're putting a lot of trust in that process, right? So I think that in a day where things are AI'd all the way, it's nice to know that you've got a human that's actually helping guide you through the process. So when you have questions, you get answers.
Right. Real answers, not
Mm,
like formulaic,
right.
and that really know what they're talking about, not just somebody who's been, put on at this aspect of the journey.
So, I mean, that's one thing is to know that you're dealing with someone who's going to know the documentation you're going to present, right? When they ask for things to be brought in that help your case, whether it's, hey, where's the treatment notes on this? Or what kind of pay records do you have? Or what kind of communications have you got? What photographs do you have? All those kinds of questions that come up, like for evidence, proving your case. That they're not just going out in the atmosphere somewhere, that you know who they're going to, that somebody's aware of those things from the beginning to the end,
Mhm.
to help put that together. So
Well, it can anticipate all the aspects that are gonna surface during the case. Whether there's what the defenses might be, what the other side would say, uh, whether there's going to be lien holders, or whether there's all the other aspects that are going to impact your case, and have the authority to have those discussions with you. Some people that work in these factory firms, they only have limited authority, and so they can't give you the answers, or can't take you to the end of what your question was.
you brought up another good point in there. There's a lot that goes into trying to resolve your claim. And part of that is securing what there is to secure for damages, right? That's the, kind of straightforward part, right? How much is this worth? What do I get? But, the more important part actually in a lot of these is what do we deal with uh, liens, who gets paid back from this because your providers,
Hmm.
your medical providers or your health insurance,
Right.
resolving those loose ends, if you will, to know what's really at stake here in the end is something that's important that you don't want a mill to get, here's your check, good luck, and then you're getting a call from
Yeah.
your health
See ya.
insurance tomorrow saying, hey, understand you resolved this case, from the other side. And by the way, we got this big bill to pay. You need to
Right.
repay us. And that's a surprise that comes that, without careful attention, may bite you.
Or if the case gets too hard and they don't want to take it to the end, I mean, we you want an attorney that's going to anticipate what hurdles there will be, you know, and with you to the end, not
Well, you'll have
giving it.
questions along the way, obviously, that need answers, right? So knowing that if you call, you're going to get a call back from the attorney, right?
Right.
And not just, you know, the paralegal or front desk person is the only person you'll ever talk to on the case, right? That you'll never hear from the attorney again until the very end. That somehow all of this was done behind the scenes somewhere and you weren't really part of the process with
Right.
the attorney, right? That you were paying to get this done. So I think that's, again,
Yeah.
comes back to trust and knowing um, that you have a relationship with the person you hired.
Sure, and that clear on what the attorney's fees are, clear on what the costs may be, what anticipated costs there may be, like if experts are needed, and having those kinds of discussions at the get-go as to what the case will entail. I think that's important when hiring an attorney. What the risks are, and having those real discussions, with somebody that knows, not, I mean, just again, somebody who has the authority and the knowledge to discuss those kinds of things. So the factories may be quick and to get the case in and get them signed up, but the person who did that doesn't have the knowledge to know what to anticipate,
Or
what
they just
difference it's
want
going
it
to make.
done so quickly because they want, the quick money on
Sure.
there. Does this resolve for, this amount quick, bit done, out, without taking the time, knowing that things develop along the way. Your injuries are more serious than you first recognized, right? There's not a rush to judgment here. There shouldn't be. You should be able to take your time to carefully analyze these things and make sure that we know that, hey, surgery was warranted in the end. You didn't think that up front, but it
Hmm.
actually worked out that way. How awful if you sold yourself short right away, right? I mean, there are situations where sometimes it plays out that no, worst case scenario, thankfully, didn't arise for you. Okay, but knowing that there's not this pressure on you to resolve something immediately on just to satisfy their,
Hmm.
overage at their places, and they just cream off the top the easy results. It's often, what we'd call smaller cases, the more subtle injuries, things like that aren't catastrophic right off the bat, where those things settle immediately, right? But something that can sometimes be a more complicated sell, if you will, to the insurance company. They don't want that. They're not going to help you. So that's something that is, one of those. If we can help you, we want to be able to help you.
Right. And just
Right.
navigating something after an injury is, I mean, that's like foreign territory for people. And so having somebody on your team, as to, gosh, Michaela, I'm still getting these headaches, what, and I don't understand. Well, maybe it's time to, get another opinion and navigating that whole process. If you haven't sustained an injury before, or maybe you did, but it was, 15 years ago, and things have changed, and there's more specialty areas, and so helping people navigate that process, rather than hearing from them. You hear from them at sign up when you sign up, and then the next time you hear is 2 months before the statute of limitation expires. And then it's a rush because there's a timeline. And then if you don't meet that timeline, well, then our fees are going to increase. And so there's all this pressure. And working with somebody from A to B, where it's developed, if you will, getting you to the right person, for treatment purposes and understanding the extent of the injury.
Yeah. I mean, so, the lesson in the end is biggest isn't always best. It's really personable relationship there and being able to communicate. Communication's key. And so we're not the biggest firm in Alaska.
Yeah, in
And
purpose.
right. But we believe that when someone's life's been turned upside down, they deserve more than just another case number with a whole battery of those. They deserve someone on their side.
At their side.
Every step of the way. So we'll have more podcasts if you're interested in different topics along the way that we can maybe help explore. That's what we thought this thing would be helpful to people approaching the process. So tune in, and the Legal Beagles will try to do our best to anticipate those questions and answer them for you. Thanks for tuning in.